This plant right here is called lamb's quarters. Now it's also referred to sometimes as goosefoot, as the leaves sometimes can resemble the shape of a goose's foot. Sometimes it's referred to as fat hen because chickens and other birds really love it. It's a really valuable nutrient source for them. Sometimes referred to as pigweed because I guess the pigs really like it too. Shows you that sometimes the animals are smarter than we are. But it's part of the Chenopodium family, and it's often called wild spinach, because essentially that's what it is. It's a very close relative to the spinach plant. It's also very close relative to both quinoa and amaranth, and the seeds can be used very similarly as you would use either of those, very high in protein. And the leaves can be used just like you would use spinach. Any recipe, any way you would prepare spinach, you can just substitute these leaves. You can just eat them raw in a salad. Anything you would use spinach in, you can use the lamb's quarter leaves. And they're actually more nutrient dense than spinach is. Now this is my friend's garden, and you can see how it's growing right next to where they throw their compost. And that's pretty common with lamb's quarters. They like really nitrogen-rich soil. So any place around a compost area or a place where a compost used to be, or there's some kind of decaying material, they love it. They soak up the nitrogen from the soil. But it's very common for lamb's quarters to have this white powdery substance on the leaves, which makes them almost waterproof. The water would just sort of bead up and roll right off of that. It's also on the undersides of the leaves. You can see I can kind of rub it off with my finger. And that's a good way to identify lamb's quarters if you're not sure. There are some species of nightshade, which is a poisonous plant that have sort of similarly shaped leaves. I think they're a little different looking, but if you're not sure, look for this white powdery stuff on especially the tips of the branches where the new leaves are growing. But that's a dead giveaway that this is lamb's quarters. Here I've got some little baby lamb's quarters, and right there, and some more right there, coming up in our garden from some that I put in here last year. Some there, some little baby ones coming up there. Right here I have several lamb's quarters that I've transplanted into our tomato bed here. These are our tomatoes on this side, and that side is going to be lamb's quarters. Now I just transplanted that one and all these right here today. They're the ones that are drooping, bending over. I always do that as soon as I transplant them. But I've watered them, and in a day or two they'll pop back up and look like those right there. So here's the lamb's quarters now that I have growing in my tomato bed. They have completely taken off. This one's taller than me now, although it's in a little bit of a raised bed. Yeah, I wanted to show you a little bit more about the plant. You know, the leaves can be they can vary a little bit in shape. You can see how this one's a little bit longer and pointier. I transplanted this from a friend of mine's yard, so maybe just a little different variety than the ones I had here in my yard, which are a little broader, a little more blunt. But I told you that the white powdery is a real big identification factor. But the stem is another one. The stems are kind of square. They're not completely round. I don't know if you can tell that. There's a corner right there where that purplish line is. But they're not completely perfectly square either. They're a little bit oddly shaped. But at the base of each node right here where the different branch comes off, it's got that purpley sort of magenta color to it. And it kind of runs in the stalk a little bit. More so in some plants than others. I realized I didn't show you a very up-close look at that purple color that I was talking about. So I'll show it to you there. You can see how even the stem has some purple streaks here and there, in this one at least. However, over in one like this one here, there's a little purple right down there in the bend, but not really any on the stalk. This one's got quite a bit. But there actually is a variety of lamb's quarter called magenta spreen, which the tips of these new leaf growth here would be a very purple magenta type color, like that is right there. I haven't ever seen any of that growing wild. I know you can sometimes buy the seeds for it, but I guess it does grow wild some places. I've been picking off of these and eating off of them for probably a couple months now. I'll just come out and pick leaves to throw in my smoothies. A lot of times I'll pinch off this, I don't know what you call it. It's not really a flower head or seed head yet. It's what would become the seed head. I'll pinch them off to promote more growth. That'll keep them from going to seed, and they'll actually grow more. I mean, they're pretty tasty just like that. But like I said, use it any way you would prepare spinach. Now it's a very, very tasty plant. The leaves do not get bitter as they get older, even with the bigger ones. As the plant gets much larger, like these down here maybe, some of the larger leaves, they become tougher, a little more fibrous. They still don't taste bad. They taste pretty good. But, if you mind that, you can just steam them for 30 seconds or so. Soften them right up. Now, as far as nutrition, I mean, this is just a wonderfully nutritious plant. Very, very rich in vitamin A. I mean, super high in vitamin A and vitamin C. There's very high in vitamin K, B complex vitamins. I know they're super high in calcium. I've heard some people say this white powdery stuff on here is actually calcium, but I've never seen that verified from a reliable source. I've just heard people say it on YouTube videos or whatnot. So I don't know if that's actually true, but they are high in calcium and manganese. And they say that they have all 9 essential amino acids to make it a whole protein. So this plant is actually higher than most in protein. Very, very good for you. Now it does have some oxalic acid in it, which, if you're someone who's susceptible to kidney stones or kidney issues, things like that, maybe something to be careful about. Although this does have less oxalic acid than spinach does. I'll talk a little bit more about that in my wood sorrel video. If that's up, then you can go see that. But if you just want to get rid of that oxalic acid, just steam them. I mean, that dissipates most of it. So, wonderful plant. I love it. I've transplanted some of it from my own garden, some of it from friends' houses. Most people just throw it away. Which really, I mean, if you'll allow me just a little bit of a rant, It just completely baffles my mind how some people, they like to garden. Let's say they want to, whether it's for financial reasons, they want to provide some free food that, that eases up on the budget a little bit, or whether it's more health reasons, if they just want to know that they're providing a food source that's, completely free of pesticides and chemical fertilizers and all those wonderful things that add to the, the cancer and all the health issues in our modern society. Well, gardening is a great way to do that, to grow clean, free food. However, a plant like this, lamb's quarters, will shoot up in the middle of their garden, and they'll just pull it up and compost it, get rid of it. And talk about completely counterintuitive. I just want to be like, do you know that plant that you just threw away is a salad green that is way more nutritious than that spinach or lettuce or kale or any of those other greens you're growing in your garden? Which, we have all that over here, but I have encouraged my wife to leave the lamb's quarters as well. Well, maybe it's somebody who doesn't necessarily garden, but maybe they just really care about their lawn looking the way our modern American society dictates that it should look. So they, spend the time and effort killing everything that's useful in their yard, and then they'll go turn around and go spend money on a lesser quality version of everything they just killed. Which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but, again, it's our modern American mindset. I actually talked to a guy not too long ago who told me he spent several $100s, can't remember the exact figure, but several $100s in eradicating the weeds in his yard. And I shouldn't laugh because, very sadly, I happen to know it's a family who has had its share of health issues. And instead of doing something to help with the problem, to encourage some nutrition and better quality food in their life, they've instead added all these harmful chemicals and things to their environment, which is certainly not going to help things. But you do what you can. I try to educate people. I try to inform their thinking a little bit without really harping on it too much. You don't want to harp on something that they have their ears and their mind completely close to. The Bible would kind of call that throwing your pearls before swine, something valuable before something that's completely not going to appreciate it. But you do what you can. Maybe somebody will take my advice and, start looking at these things a little bit differently than we've been conditioned to. And if, one person hears this and starts actually thinking about it, if I can change one person's thinking, then it'll all be worth it. So I hope you'll at least consider it. Making a smoothie with kefir, chia seeds, banana, kelp powder, stevia, coconut oil, and lamb's quarters leaves. Got some larger leaves and some of the top parts I've pinched off. And even some of the young plants, you can just throw the whole things in there. So yeah, that's lamb's quarters. I hope you'll take the time to try it. Really, really pleasant plant. I like it a lot. It's one of my favorites.